All right, everyone, we have completed yet another book, which brings us to First Kings. There's quite a few pieces for discussion today, and so forgive me if I start trying to move us along. There's just a lot of discussion. I want to make sure that we wrap up talking about David, introduce ourselves to this book, and for the next few weeks, I have us reading a little bit out of Proverbs, and we'll talk about that at the end. So the last 15 minutes, I'm going to save to try to talk about Proverbs just a little bit.
Okay.
Our main focus will still majority be on First Kings.
Okay.
So to get us rolling for today, there is a lot of time that passes between the end of First and Second Samuel, and then the First Kings. Uh, and to give us a little bit of reminders of the connection between these two books. This is a continuous narrative, more or less, that is often called the Deuteronomistic history, that basically connects Joshua, Judges, First and Second Samuel, and First and Second Kings. It is thought that these are kind of a history block that takes the people from the conquest of Canaan to the exile. And so we're still in this same block that has very similar theology throughout it. One where worship of God is first and foremost. God being the only God is a very important theme that will be touched on a lot in this. There is a celebration of the monarchy and a skepticism of the monarchy that is woven together. But this is so First and Second Samuel were kind of a block unto itself, and now First and Second Kings, originally one book that was broken apart in the Middle Ages. This is kind of the second block of the history of the monarchy. And so there's a big time gap between these two, where we left off that last week and where we're starting this week. So, any questions before we dive in, kind of with that background and refresher?
How big a time gap? Because David was getting pretty old already, so maybe what, 10 or 15 years?
So, um, the way I would explain it is there is a difference in age and mobility when you first get on Medicare to when you are at end of life.
Yeah.
That's the type of time gap that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, yeah, not a
And
huge amount then.
it was beginning to be that he couldn't swing a sword, which is different than he is in bed with a beautiful lady and cannot even seduce her.
Okay, you're talking between about maybe 20 years at the most,
Yeah,
not hundreds of years. Okay, I just
correct.
wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Well, David supposedly ruled 40 some years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Or that's the time that they give us. 40 is
That,
always one of those suspicious numbers of
yeah,
he ruled a very long time.
long time.
All right. The other thing, just a note to kind of keep in our back pockets as we jump into First and Second Kings. Um, while this is part of the more historic type of text, this is not the annals of the king. We know that this is not the annals of the king because this book in particular makes reference to the annals of the king. So there's a bunch of books that we don't have that this book talks about like they exist. So a few of them is the books of the Acts of Solomon. So Solomon very much documented all of his monarchy, and this book knows that there is a thorough documentation. We don't have it. We have the book of the annals of the king of Judah and the annals of the kings of Israel. So these existed in this time. There will be a story, and it's like, if you want more details, look in the annals. And we can't do that because it's lost to history. Probably in the conquest, these books were burned. Yeah, Larry?
Okay, we have one other document. That's this. This is a copy of a sermon that Matt Taylor delivered on March 21st, 1982. That's
Okay.
43 years ago. That's 10 years before Chris was born. And this deals specifically with Abishag, the Shumanite, and the ascension of Solomon to the throne. So we've got another take on it. It's
Okay,
sort of,
when we get to that, I want to hear about that one.
well, I have a copy which I will be happy to circulate amongst anyone that would like to read it. I must say this is even a little far out for Mac.
Uh-huh.
He was really riding high when he wrote this one. Okay, I'll say.
You've been waiting for this one, Larry. You've been waiting for the
I've
show.
been waiting for Abishag. She's one of my favorites.
Oh, all righty. Well, with that introduction, let's get ourselves rolling. So, one of the difference with King David, with a bunch of the other leadership that we've seen at this point, with the judges would rise, they would rule for a while, and then they would pass away, and then this area would kind of descend into chaos. There was no lineage, there was no passing of power until someone else rose up. Then we got the first king, in which he was murdered in battle, and the number two person, kind of David, was waiting in the flanks to kind of ascend to power. Here we have in a way, a soft ascension. David is old. He ruled for a very long time, and now he's getting older in his years. So, pausing here before we get to Abishag the Shumite, let's reflect a little bit about David's story from start to finish. Starting as the youngest son in the fields, being brought into the palace, being hunted by your mentor, eventually rising to power, having a family drama kind of overshadow the second part of your rule, and now being old and in bed. What are your thoughts about King David in the arc of his life? Yeah, Gretchen?
She's muted.
Oh, check your mute.
Gretchen's on mute.
Yep.
Now she's okay.
She's working on it.
Yeah.
It's really a story of a very long life, of ups and downs, we would kind of say. I mean, this would, if you're thinking about movies, you think about this as being, needing several actors to be him at different times in his life. This story is there any other story that is more complete in the Bible? Really? Is Abraham? I don't know. I mean, this is Jacob, but I don't know. Anyway, I just was thinking, this is a long saga.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct. And this is the most detailed story we get. Abraham, we get him midlife. Like, we don't know his early life. We don't see him as a young teenager. We kind of get him already established as a patriarch and then going on this journey. And their sons, or Isaac and Jacob, we get more of their life, but we don't get the nitty-gritty details. This has been almost an entire book where we see or the previous books where we have seen the rise of David.
Well, I think he was a very complicated person. He had a great faith. Seemed like he was very close to God, and then at times he would slip up and do something horrible, or he would be not very nice to people sometimes, and still he was always on top of his game.
Yeah.
I was going to put that he stays in power, he hangs in there. He's the king for this very long time, regardless of what happens with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think complicated is a very good word too for David. That
Mhm.
we often, the Sunday school image of David we get is very squeaky clean, and that's just not accurate. And I don't think it does service to someone who is wrestling with life most of the time. Um, how good or bad of a person he is really depends on how much you trust the text or not. But the one thing you can always say is that through thick and thin, he is very he is very attached to God. He is very quick to bring up faith, to bring up the Lord, sometimes for good or for ill, but that is one aspect that kind of carries him through is his religiosity. So with that, kind of reflecting on this very complex human, it's almost interesting how like Saul got a warrior's end. He died on the battlefield. And David is now an old man. And
In the garage, is there any sort of
it is even said that like he can't even, he is so
like
infirmed that he can't keep himself warm.
I don't
And
know.
so
It
they
is a
bring in
terrible
this
thing.
young, beautiful virgin, and it is said that the king does not have relations with her. The slight implications is that he is old enough that he is impotent and cannot.
Yes.
I am very curious with this. What Mac? Do you have like a 2 sentence summary of what Mac has to say about her? Because she comes up in two parts of the story that are kind of disconnected.
Yeah, well, Mack in his sermon sort of looks more into what were the motives of the people that arranged to get Abishag, the committee meeting that they had to decide what they're going to do for the king, and they say, well, we get a nice warm girl, why not get a real beauty, and really make a big deal out of it. And from Abishag's point of view, he says, well, what's her, what did they do to convince her? Did they offer her money or fame? Or it was her duty for the country, or maybe she was part of some sort of plot. You get to
Oh,
sleep with the king, you are sort of the queen, and that comes up again later on in this story when what's his name tries to get her from his mother, so that sort of thing, we don't know, but obviously we don't know.
I feel like the modern day thing that actually brings to mind is when you see an older person with a very young wife and we're like, oh, she's a
a
gold
trophy,
digger.
a
Right.
trophy wife.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
That I would think would make
so
sense.
this is not necessarily without plot or intrigue. So, okay, interesting. So not only do we have this young lady who does have proximity to the king, even though she would not be considered part of his like his harem, she is not a concubine, she does not have relations with the king because it's kind of implied to be not possible. At the same time that's happening, now we have I should have thought about how to pronounce this. Adonijah, there we go. Adonijah, son of Haggith, who is the next in line to the throne. David has many children. This is now his third son in line. And seeing that the king is old and infirmed, he's like, yay, I'm gonna be king! The time is close, and he decides to throw himself a really big party and invite a bunch of people to it. So what's going on? And by the way, the king's not invited, the king is not told. This is just a party of the celebration party of the next in line to the throne with the generals. What's the thinking here? Why would he throw uh a pre-king I'm going to be king party? He hasn't been anointed, he hasn't been given anything yet. There's nothing that's actually changed. So he's throwing an anticipatory party in his own honor.
Mhm.
Yeah, Gretchen?
Well, politically, it's kind of like being an incumbent for him. When other people come up, he's already in place. I think of him as the pretend incumbent.
Mhm.
Well, he's like the prince, um,
Well, the heir apparent.
heir apparent.
Heir
Yeah.
apparent.
Yeah. So politically though, why might it be a good idea to throw this incumbent party? What would be going on at the party around the dinner table? What are they talking about? Why is he bringing all these important people to the table?
He's trying to get their support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're talking about Adonijah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody likes somebody who gives a good party.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he's handsome.
Oh, once again, we get another handsome.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I have a feeling there is something. This is true now, and it was true in the ancient world. It turns out you develop more evenly, like facially wise, if you have good nutrition. And it turns out your hair looks nicer if you're able to like wash and comb it more regularly. Your skin is more even if you're not out in the dirt clogging your pores. There's a certain beauty that I swear just comes with wealth.
Mhm.
True then, true now.
So he is handsome, people are around him. I imagine they're talking about political favors. They're like, "Oh, do you want an office in my cabinet? Well, what are you gonna do?" Like this is the like planning party. Like, yes, it's a celebration, but I bet he is seeing who's gonna do what for him and who's gonna do what for who. It's kind of like a pre-planning party.
It's kind of a fundraiser. This is super fun. I mean, without taking the funds,
Well, David doesn't seem to know about this. This is all going on with that general who was always killing people he shouldn't have killed. And he doesn't seem to necessarily tells David, but David had been planning all along to have Bathsheba's son.
Hold
Hadn't
up
he?
there. Hold that thought. Maybe
Okay.
not.
What?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Okay.
There is some question around Solomon here.
Oh, okay.
So we have this. I like the idea of this being kind of like a fundraiser party.
Okay.
It kind of modern politically would be somewhat similar. Who is willing to do what? You're kind of setting up the next power brokers of the next kingdom. And
Is there excuse me, I was just going to say, is there also maybe a little psychological part of it in that he wants everybody to think of him as king before any questions arise?
right. In some ways, you could see this as a show of power of like, don't threaten me. He's kind of claiming the title before he is given the title.
Get others to think of him as that.
Mm-hmm.
Support, as someone said, support him.
And especially with Joab in the party, Joab has been a loose cannon. Who's gonna challenge? Which of his brothers is gonna challenge him with Joab on his side? Come on, Joab's with me, and it's kind of that like, come at me. Like, what are you gonna do? So he sets himself up that way, but there is one downside that he doesn't think about when trying to establish his, I would call it soft power. Like he can't assert the hard power yet. He doesn't have the title. So it's this soft power of kind of claiming it before it's given. What's the downside? Why does this backfire? Oop, Jennifer, check.
Because word gets out
Mm-hmm.
and gets back to the king and the people who might not want him to be in power who haven't been included, who might feel like this is their only chance to make a course correction.
Mm-hmm. In some ways, his failing was he didn't invite the people he didn't like. It would have been maybe different if he had invited Nathan. But Nathan was excluded, and Nathan doesn't like this guy. We're not really told why. I do think it is telling, though, that the son is throwing himself a yay me party. Probably is not the best suited person to be king. And we've already seen Nathan. Do you all remember who the prophet Nathan is?
He'd be getting pretty old now, wouldn't he?
He would.
Yep.
So Nathan is the one who confronts King David after David has Uriah the Hittite killed, and he takes Bathsheba. So it's actually fascinating that Nathan, who scolded David for sleeping with Bathsheba, is now on Bathsheba and Solomon's side. So that's interesting. At any rate, Nathan is a prophet who has challenged kings before. And yeah, he's probably getting up in those years. He's no longer young, and he seems unafraid of Abiathar. So he hatches this plan with Bathsheba of send Bathsheba in, speaking of a promise that David made of his son to anoint Solomon king over Israel, give the kingdom to Solomon. The thing is, the way that this is phrased implies this did not happen.
Yeah.
The implication is that David is old enough he doesn't remember either way. And so Bathsheba comes in saying it, and Nathan's like, I'll come in after you, affirming you did this. And it's to trick the king.
Yep.
Where have we seen this story before? Because this has echoes of a different story much earlier in the text. All right, we're talking Genesis now. Those of you who are with me with Genesis, this story should sound familiar.
Is it another story about a youngest son getting?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, there's several times that a youngest son is chosen. Was it Benjamin? What was the youngest one? Benjamin? No, wait a minute.
Benjamin was
That was one
son
youngest
of
son,
Jacob, but not the story I'm thinking of.
No, it's too early anyway. I can't remember.
Do you all remember? So we have the twins Esau and Jacob.
Oh, that far back. Okay.
Yeah, we're talking really far back here.
Okay.
This is like 2 years ago now. So a quick refresher. We have Abraham, the original Hebrew patriarch. Abraham has his son Isaac. Isaac has Jacob and Esau. Esau is this big brawny brother.
Yeah.
And Jacob is the effeminate one who stays with the tent with his mother.
Yeah.
They are twins, but Esau comes out first. And it says that Jacob was holding his ankle. And there is a prediction that the younger will rule the older. Esau gives away his birthright for a bowl of soup. And then we have this second point where Jacob is old. He is blind, and he is basically on his deathbed, and he tells Esau, go out and hunt and bring and make me the food that I like so I can give you my patriarchal blessing. His mother, or their mother, hears this, and Rebecca says, Jacob, come here. I will make the food he likes. We will put goat skin on your arm so you feel as hairy as your brother, and you will trick your father into giving you the patriarchal blessing. This has echoes of this, where you have the woman meddling and in a way tricking the patriarch to give the blessing to the younger son.
Oh.
So I know that that is a very big throwback, and it's not. I actually heard a quote recently that said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes." And that's this is that similar situation where it's not a copy paste repeat, but it's definitely rhyming with this old story. And the tradition of the of power, blessing, and the seat of the patriarch not going to the eldest, not going to the one who is the biggest and brawniest, but it going to the wisest and most cunning. So does it, with that context, does it change the story a little bit if you realize they are tricking King David into giving Solomon the throne?
Oh,
Hmm.
I didn't. I thought that was his idea before.
There was
Reason.
no
Yeah,
mention
okay.
before that David said this,
Right,
and other
right.
contextual factors make it sound like Nathan just doesn't want Abiathar, and so this is his plan to get the kid he wants on the throne.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So they go through with the plan. Oh yeah, Gretchen?
Keep muted.
Yeah.
It's a fairly complex, I mean, they've really worked on this. And that it shows kind of the importance of the succession. You know, there's all this planning kind of behind the scenes and who's going to do what and how are they going to do it. It's more complex than the Rebecca fixing up the stew.
It is, yes, you are right. And in this situation, it's not just Bathsheba doing it by herself, which I don't think would have the same level of gravitas, but the fact that it's being planned by the prophet Nathan gives it a little bit more weight.
And Chris, this goes back a ways, but I think it's the end of 2 Samuel. But David says to somebody with, in his court about, for I have sinned. Is he talking about the sin with Bathsheba?
Yeah.
And so that sin has just followed him all those years, and it's affecting his relationships with people and
Yes. So there's a few ways to think about the fact that David sinned. There could be an argument that the fact that David sleeping with Bathsheba was actually the smaller of the sins that David committed, and that the bigger one was that he didn't confess, that he tried to cover it up, and ultimately he murdered to cover up his sin. That is, I would actually the bigger one. It wasn't the adultery, it's that he killed her husband to cover up his adultery, which is like covering up your sin with more sin. But the thing where you see this kind of echo through the family, there is the narrative explains it by the family dysfunction is David's punishment, where I would say David was a dysfunctional person, and if you don't address dysfunction, dysfunction repeats itself through the family. And in the same way that if a parent yells at a child and disciplines them harshly, there's high likelihood that that child then, when they have kids, yells at their children and disciplines them harshly. And so you see that kind of like echo because that's the model. And so it seems like David's children followed David's dysfunctional habits. Which is why we've seen now three sons be eldest sons be very dysfunctional with David. But the sin is connected with both Bathsheba and the death of Uriah, him kind of outright murdering or setting up a situation
had a
where
box of
Uriah
smoke
was
detectors.
killed.
You found it?
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
So, unlike Adonijah, they don't throw a party for Solomon. What they do is they arrange a ceremony, and they actually do the ceremony where Solomon is brought in front of the people, where the oil is poured over his head. He rides on the king's mule, which my notes once again say horses at this time were not used for riding. Mules were the royal mode of transportation. And then Solomon sits on the throne. So it's not like an incumbent party. It's not a fundraiser. No, they just go ahead and make Solomon king while his brother is partying and fundraising. So this is, and when the people are celebrating, they're hearing in their ears, like the town is celebrating because there would be a party after the coronation of the next king. And while Abiathar is partying, they hear the ruckus of the city and they hear that a king has been anointed. And I cannot imagine what it was like for Abiathar to hear someone has been anointed king and he knows it's not him. So what do you think of this dramatic irony that he's been partying saying, I'm going to be king while the king was actually being anointed?
It's,
It's not all that easy to just take over a throne because you want to.
Right. What could he have done differently? What would have made this plan not go sideways for him?
You kind of think about it, Adonijah having all this party and people sitting around the party and drinking and having a good time. And then somebody whispers, is there something going on in the city? And it kind of takes over, and pretty soon it gets to Adonijah and you think, what's going on? Not good.
Uh-huh.
I don't
Well,
know.
He didn't seek his father's favor.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, he went to his friends before he went to the king.
Yeah.
No.
He was trying to broker power deals before he had brokered his own future. It makes me think, have you seen videos of races where someone is in the lead in a foot race and they celebrate and the second place runner passes them as they're doing their victory dance because they never finished or crossed the finish line?
That's crazy.
That's kind of what it feels like to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's sort of like in modern terms, it's like a political candidate being endorsed by some governor or something or other. What's his name went to the people and the army and tried to raise it that way, whereas Nathan goes directly to the king and says, we get the king to say he's my successor. That's the end of it.
yeah, they shouldn't have left David out.
Yeah.
I think he underestimated the remaining power with the king. He wasn't as ill or feeble as what he thought.
Well, no, he was. He just had people around him that were smarter.
Yeah. I mean, David still gets manipulated in this context.
David apparently couldn't even remember. Had he said Solomon was going to be his successor? No, his mother said he did.
Joe, anybody that's involved with Joab, I don't know how he's managed to survive. He just does things all the time that he shouldn't do, and he's still around. He must be really old.
Well, not for much longer. So
okay, I know.
after we have the big reveal, Solomon's been anointed king. Abiathar, you're not it. what we get for the rest of this chapter, in which the notes were saying that these first two chapters seem to have at one point existed as a standalone story. So the succession of the king and all of that. So they have a narrative cohesion to it. But the second half of it deals with, so Solomon and David have a conversation where David kind of gives him the lowdown of like who is who. This person did this thing, this person did this thing. And we see that David has like unfinished business because he's like, go after Joab, you're wise, take care of him. This person did this, don't trust this person, and kind of gives him a laundry list of David's unfinished duties.
Yeah.
And then Solomon spends the next two chapters kind of completing that laundry list. Yeah, Gary?
Well, he doesn't seem too feeble. He remembers all these things, and he gives a lot of instructions to Solomon. So that's why I thought
Oh,
he
yeah.
was judge.
I mean, I will say there does seem to be contradictory evidence of David's mental state, where there's sometimes like he is able to be fooled, but he also is holding a grudge on some of these people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, David's not a potato. He's not a vegetable catatonic. Like he still is with it there. And so, the first, let's see. One of the first people he deals with, or Adonijah then goes to Bathsheba asking for a favor. The favor is for Abishag the Shumite to be given as his wife.
He wants it.
We have seen this request before. When Saul died, one of his concubines was asked for by someone who did not inherit the throne. And it seems like this is one of those things where it is not necessarily that these men are sweet on these ladies, but it does seem to be a grab for power, that they want an object of the king's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you sleep with the queen, you must be the king.
mm-hmm. Or you can at least pretend so in your head.
Yeah.
So, so Bathsheba goes. She actually does what Abiathar says. Why do you think Bathsheba would go through with this plan? Why would she communicate something to her son like this that is politically testy?
Well, she wants Solomon on the throne, probably, rather than his brother.
Yeah, but her son's now the king. Why would she advocate on behalf of the older brother of the king?
Well, does she perhaps hold a grudge yet against David? I mean, David ordered her husband, whom she loved, killed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So
it doesn't say that, but
yeah, we're not actually given her motivation here, but she may be doing something that is ill-advised. Adonijah asks her to do something, and she may think, this is not a good thing for him. I'm gonna do it anyways. Because she's advocating for Solomon's rival, which feels weird at first glance. And Solomon, sure enough, he blows up like mother, why are you asking for this? Like, why are you advocating for my rival? Number two, no, like he doesn't get that. And the promise that he made to Adonijah before is, I'm not going to kill you if you're a good person. If you're a bad person, I'm going to kill you. And this seems to be the excuse he needs to kill his rival. So what do we think about this? Was this worthy of death? Was this a convenient excuse for Solomon to rid himself of his competitor? Did Bathsheba do this knowing that Solomon would not react well? Because the thing to keep in mind, so once again, the text seems to be protecting Solomon's reputation. Solomon, kind of like, you know how David was never, he wasn't in the battle that killed Saul. He wasn't in the battle that killed
Right,
his
right.
son. He was never guilty of those things, except for Uriah. With the plot to make Solomon king, Solomon was not a part of that plot. Solomon was an object that was being toyed around.
Right,
He
right.
didn't manipulate the king. He just happened to be the benefactor of it.
Mhm.
And in the same way, this feels hands off of like, I told you to be a good person. Look, you're being a terrible person, so now I get to kill you. So this once again may just be an excuse. Bathsheba may have manipulated. She seems to be a very cunning person because my guess is she was hoping that Adonijah's request would fail. That would be my guess.
Mhm.
But then the text then deals with Joab, where Joab gets news that the guy he supported was just killed. And so this happens with both of the men. When they feel they're in danger, they go to the horns of the altar.
Mhm.
Um, what this is they're going into the holy space. They're not touching the Ark of the Covenant. That would explode you, melt your face off. But there was horns on either side of the fire pit where you would basically stick the animal to then have the fat roasted off of it, and there's your offering for God. So they are going to where the sacrificial offerings are, and in some ways saying like they have proximity to God, but also a sense of sanctuary of like, don't kill me here, I'm in the sacred spot. But they're also where the sacrifices are being taken place, so they would have theoretical protection from the priests. And so they're throwing themselves on the horns of the altar, which is basically throwing them at the sacrifice spot, saying, please don't kill me. I'll do what you want. And Solomon doesn't seem to have any tolerance for Joab. At first, he's like, come out here, like, let's not kill you in the Holy of Holies. But eventually he gives the word of like, well, if Joab won't come out, go kill him on the sacrifice place.
Mhm.
What do you all think of this, of doing away with Joab because of the blood on his hands, and with the final thought, or the final declaration, and to his descendants on his house and to his throne there shall be peace from the Lord forevermore. So with killing Joab, there will be peace. Yeah, Gretchen?
I don't think he had a choice about getting rid of Joab. I mean, Joab is from the past and really involved in all kinds of intrigue and murder and everything. And Solomon has got to start Solomon has to start fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was kind of delayed for Joab. Joab just kept getting by with things. Like all of a sudden, then here, okay, he's done. Now things are good. I mean, I don't know. It's like keeping one member of the cabinet and then finally saying, no, I can't have that member of the cabinet anymore. I mean,
Right.
it's over. New day.
Mhm.
I mean, Joab's also a bully. So like getting rid of the bully can dramatically change the tone of conversation and how things go forward, especially if, yeah, you're getting rid of the bully in the king's cabinet.
Well, he must have had some use for David because David let him keep on doing his thing. I mean, it didn't.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
He must have been a pretty good general or something.
So with that thought, there is a tonal change that is happening. So what was one of the main features of King Saul's rule? So King Saul, how did he become famous? What did he spend most of his time doing other than hunting David, putting hunting David on the side? What was Saul often doing?
Fighting the Philistines.
Right. Saul was a warrior king. He was out in battle. King Saul has killed his thousands. And then along comes David. What was a main feature of David's rule? Or rise to power, if nothing else.
Well, he had killed his 10,000.
Oh,
Exactly. So you have two warrior kings whose fame was predicated upon their military prowess. So that's why Joab is smart to keep around. Joab is a very good military guy.
Mhm.
What does it signal when you punish your top military general who's very good at fighting?
Mhm.
What kind of tone is Solomon setting?
Oh, it's all peaceful now from now on. Everything is going to be nice because I don't have these awful people around me. I'm going to be so wise and wonderful.
Does Solomon have military experience? Oh, see, I see a hand, Gary. Go for it.
Well, it's a change of regime here in that, he has his own executioner, this guy Benaiah or whatever it is. And so it's a whole new rule that he's setting in place. And he's just getting rid of all the old regime. Just cleaning house so that he has a chance to begin his rule.
Exactly. And the last one he gets rid of is, if you remember when David was fleeing, there's a guy who was like yelling from his yard, cursing David, saying, "You're responsible for the death of Saul." And then he had to apologize when David came back through. David told Solomon to take care of him. Don't trust him. Take care of him. And so Solomon sets it up so he's basically on house arrest. And the guy seems to think, okay, that's fair.
And
But
then
when
he
he
forgets.
he goes and gets his slave, and Solomon's like, broke the
Oh,
rules, you're dead.
I like that. You need a good memory. I mean, I tell you.
Yeah. And that was like a 3-year time difference.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to get a slave.
So with that, Solomon is in power. He has gotten rid of the old guard. He is installing his new people. But the tone of Solomon's rule is going to be different. We will touch on that somewhat in 2 weeks because next week we have off. But we're going to get a little bit of a taste of it if we flip over to Proverbs. The selection from Proverbs, I'm just trying to get you a little bit of a taste of what this book is like. I'm not going to go through line by line.
Oh, come on, please. We're so excited for it.
Oh, all right. Proverbs is one, if we want to read it, I would say we need to read it like actually go and like set it aside and do it on its own terms. This is just when they're talking about Solomon's wisdom, I just want you all to have a taste of what it sounds like. So we get in chapter 1 a prologue that this is the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. I think you all know it's one of the iconic personas of Solomon is that he was a very wise king and he knew many proverbs. So when it comes to wisdom today and being wise, describe what we think of today. If you were to go to someone who was wise, what kind of things do they say? Like,
well, they say it well, first of all. I mean, they have a knack for really proclaiming it.
So proclaiming it makes it sound like it's in long form. So we think of wisdom more in paragraphs, in sermons, in books, like long form wisdom, right?
Right. Yeah.
When you think of some of the great thinkers, well, describe some of the aspects of them.
They're ahead of their time, maybe.
Okay. B?
And the question you would ask is, have you thought this through? So they're real thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Usually they're students.
in history. It's a very deep and ancient basic thought process, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom was here before the earth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they certainly, as a group, appear to be not warlike or conquering. They're more conciliatory, work it out. There must be some way of explaining this and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would argue a lot of Western deep thinking traditions often when you go to like your philosophy 101 class or some of those classes that are thinking about thinking, you will often hear them talk about the Greeks. You'll hear about Plato, you'll hear about Socrates, you'll hear about the modern people who write long books and use big words. That is our form of wisdom in a way. Or even if you think about someone like Einstein, I forget which one of you said ahead of their time. They're thinking new thoughts. They're thinking innovative thoughts. They're thinking about theories that no one has thought about before. None of those things describe wisdom in the Hebrew tradition. I need you to put that on the side of what our wisdom tradition is. That's not this one.
Okay.
Larry, I saw a hand.
Well, I read somewhere that there are some experts in the Bible who feel that Abishai represented wisdom, that this was the attempt of the people around David to get him wisdom. And she
Interesting. Okay.
that.
David needs to listen to more women. I don't think that's wrong. David doesn't seem to listen to women. I'm just saying he has other things that he does. So to describe the wisdom tradition, and the thing you must understand for Solomon, wisdom was measured by how many proverbs you have memorized. Solomon did not write these. He did not write them. That is the consensus, that like these are not Solomon's original works, because then it wouldn't be Solomon's wisdom. Solomon was wise because he went throughout the land memorizing different proverbs. So in seeking out wisdom, he is a very great memorizer. He has all of the sayings at the tip of his tongue, but he's not Einstein putting together new pieces of wisdom. He is learning from the ancients, learning from other people, which, Gary, that relates back to what you mentioned with wisdom being there at the foundation, being older than in a way Earth itself. What's this version of wisdom is doing is like you're trying to like crack it open, sweep back the dust. You're trying to look at what's already there. You're not trying to think of new things because wisdom is ancient. You just have to find it. Yeah, Gretchen.
You know, this is a kind of an aside, but in Kenya, you buy you purchase things that kind of look like tablecloths. There's a different name for them in Kenya, and I forget what it is, but they're very useful. You know, it's a sheet of fabric, and it always has a slogan down the middle. And it kind of reminds me of what like Proverbs is. It's like you sit at the table and you say, "Oh, that's the truth. Isn't that the truth for today?" And whatever. Like I think I have a whole bunch of these, and most of them I don't have them translated because I don't speak Swahili. But you know, like what kind of like one that says, "What's good for mama is good for everybody." You know, and it kind of reminds me that that's sort of the nature of biblical proverbs, isn't it?
Yes.
Is it a little like
pithy
comments?
sayings.
So there are 3 wisdom books that go hand in hand, and we're going to touch on all of them. Like I said, if we want to do in-depth study of them, this is literally a flyby on them while we're reading about Solomon's life. There are 3 books that are attributed to him in the wisdom tradition. This is the first one. And to get the tone of this one, if you go to Proverbs 1, we're going to start in verse 8. Pay attention to the words here because there's a specific thing I want you to listen for is who is talking.
Yeah.
Hear, my child, your father's instructions, and do not reject your mother's teachings. They are a fair garland on your head, a pendant for your neck. My child, if sinners entice you, do not consent. This book is attributed to Solomon, but it is the words of a mother to her son.
Is it sort of like common sense?
Yes. This is a common sense wisdom book for young men starting out on their life. This is like that intro line, it is kind of implied that if this is truly Solomon's wisdom, this is what Bathsheba told him as a young man.
Uh-huh.
It has a lot of young men wisdom, that things to get you started on life, things that are just things, how to live a good life.
Wow.
How to be honorable, how to be respectable. There's a lot of times where it's like, if your wife is nagging you, just go up onto the roof and let her settle down. There's a lot about that. Multiple times. But a lot of this has a very feminine voice, which is where we also get the idea of Sophia that we talked about a few sermons ago. We have the call of wisdom that's in the beginning, but I also assigned Proverbs 8, which is where we get the second creation story of wisdom calling out onto the streets, listen to me. It is thought that maybe this is some of the female influence that we see in the Bible, which is not often that we get a very clear feminine voice. But it is the voice of a mother, the call of wisdom, the pleading of a mother for her son to make good decisions. Memorize these things, live them out, and you will have a good life.
And so a woman is wise enough to have come up with all this. So they respected the wisdom of women.
I mean, if you remember, was it last week where Joab was attacking a thing and a wise woman came to broker the deal?
Yes.
So women can be wise, but your wisdom was to protect and raise men. And Solomon is wise because he memorizes the sayings of his mother.
Wow.
So with that, we are kind of at time. I just want to, we will get to the other pieces of wisdom because the 3 pieces of wisdom are for, or the 3 books of wisdom are for 3 stages in life. This is the beginning one. This is early Solomon. He needs the Proverbs. What can we expect from Solomon knowing that this is what we are heading towards? That Solomon is known for wisdom, that the wisdom is guided by the wisdom of women. It is the call of someone, a pleading of wisdom in the streets, of beckoning forward. What do we expect of Solomon's rule? Yeah, Larry?
Peace.
Peace. Yeah.
He's not going, yeah, he's a real departure from the warrior king. Very different.
Yes. Yeah, Solomon's not a warrior at all. But that said, we've already seen in the initial things, that doesn't mean he's not strict.
No.
He is strict and he does have limits and boundaries. What are other things we expect from Solomon?
So maybe to build up the kingdom more, work towards better things for the people.
Okay. So if you're not externally focused, that means what I'm hearing from you is Solomon's likely going to be more interior focused. How do we make the people or the nation great?
Yeah.
So if there's conflict externally, how do we expect Solomon to respond? If the Philistines are approaching the boundaries, how do we expect Solomon, who is wise and not a warrior, to deal with things?
Maybe he tried to negotiate.
Okay, negotiation.
He might be a kind of person who avoids
Could be avoidance.
completely, buries his head in the sand, so to speak.
Okay.
Encourages people to be not so much warrior-like as to be thinking. I don't know if I don't know if we ever see that or not, but that would be.
I mean, it's just that this isn't a part of thinking about where the story might go. So no wrong answers. It's just one of those of thinking about where this kind of personality might go. So we will see in 2 weeks. The next chapter is literally about Solomon asking for wisdom, one of the classic stories of Solomon. And then we will start to see a little bit of how he rules, like what things he's focused on, what his main campaigns are going to be. And diving a little bit more, I think next time, the next 2 sections of Proverbs are some of my favorites. This was kind of an introduction. You're gonna get some of just a taste of the like little witty tip niblets. Because most of them are sayings, they're quotes. They're not paragraphs, Solomon didn't write books. Yeah. These are the sayings. So any final thoughts for the transfer of power and the establishment of Solomon's rule?
Chris, am I wrong? Did you assign Proverbs for today and I just missed it? Are there going to be
Yeah, but that's okay. I readjusted the schedule, so if something got left off, that's probably my fault.
And we're off for 2 weeks, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We'll forget everything. So it's a good thing we're starting with fresh with Solomon. We're done for.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? We said, no, I don't remember that. It was David.
We'll have a refresher again on Proverbs. Don't worry.
Okay.
But folks, we are in the home stretch. Like thinking about it, starting with Genesis, even like thinking about the like we got it all the way through to the promised land. Now thinking that we have made it from Joshua to here. We are now, Solomon is the last one to hold the kingdom together. We have already seen the cracks. By December, the people will be in exile.
Wow.
We are going to move fast through a lot of this, but there's also a lot where there's a lot of this king was good and they did this, and this king was bad and they did this.
That's right.
Second Kings is a lot less interesting than First Kings.
Okay.
But we are in the home stretch till we have finished the history of Israel. So.
Wow.
All right. Well, shall we pray ourselves out for today?
Yes.
Let us pray. Loving God, we ask for wisdom. More than riches, more than wealth, more than fame. We follow in Solomon's tradition of asking for wisdom. For God, our scriptures say that wisdom was at the very foundation of the world, something that existed before all else, that called things into being. God, our world feels chaotic and messy, and so once again, we want wisdom so we can pull order from this chaos, so we can find peace and stability, so we can have lives that are full of abundance instead of battles, instead of conflict. And so guide us in these next few weeks while we are apart. Help us always look to you and your wisdom in books, in narratives, but even in the whispering of the winds, in the trees as they rustle, in the earth as it holds us, as a symbol of you holding us in your loving care. So guide this group, be with us all in our travels and trips until we're able to gather again together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Yes.
It was great.